I'm Emily, a 28-year-old who feels lost in the noise of life. Ever since I graduated from college, I've chased jobs that others thought were great. I worked in an office as a marketing assistant, but each day felt heavy, like a thick fog that wouldn't lift. I sat at my desk in a tiny cubicle, surrounded by walls that seemed to close in on me. My coworkers chatted about weekend plans, while I struggled to find the words to describe my own feelings. Every day blended into the next, like the gray sky outside our window. I had a hard time waking up each morning, dreading the thought of returning to a job that didn't light a fire inside me. My parents always told me to play it safe and go for security, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something huge. Deep down, an ache was growing, reminding me of missed dreams. I often thought about my childhood when I spent hours drawing and writing stories. Those moments filled my heart with joy, but now they seemed like distant memories. The weight of doubt settled on my shoulders. Was I really meant to be stuck in a job that didn't make me happy? I wondered if I could find a path to something better, something that made me feel alive again. The tension in my mind mirrored the clutter on my desk, filled with papers and tasks I didn't care about. Each day was a struggle against a sense of resignation, a quiet fight as I longed for mental clarity to guide me toward my true passion. I decided it was time to change my life after that haunting feeling of being trapped in my cubicle became too much to bear. I Googled ways to boost my focus, hoping to dive into something that would fill me with passion. I watched videos and read articles, but my motivation quickly fell flat. I sat down at my desk one Saturday morning, excited to try a new deep work strategy one had learned about. The idea was simple: work without distractions. I set a timer for 30 minutes, but as soon as I started, I found myself checking my phone for messages. That soft ping was my worst enemy. With every minute that ticked away, my excitement turned to frustration. I felt like I was wrestling with a heavy weight on my shoulders. Why couldn't I stay focused? Every time I tried to push ideas onto paper, my old habits pulled me back, like a voice in my head saying, "You can't do this." I would quickly lose hope, putting away my notebook and scrolling mindlessly through social media instead. My dreams began to feel like the distant stars in the night sky, beautiful but so far away. Days turned into weeks, and as I kept failing to focus, self-doubt crept into my mind. I thought about how easy it was for my friends to find their passion, to chase it with open hearts. Why was it so hard for me? The high expectations I had for myself felt like shadows, following my every step. I wondered if I was destined to be stuck in jobs that didn't excite me, wondering if there really was a better path waiting for me. Then one day, a small change sparked a flicker of hope. I walked into my favorite coffee shop, ready to drown my sorrows in caffeine. As I stood in line, I saw an old friend named Sarah. We hadn't spoken in years, but we used to share our dreams after high school. I approached her, hoping for just a warm hug. To my surprise, Sarah was just so full of energy. She told me how she had discovered her love for photography and was now working professionally. Her voice lit up as she talked about her adventures with a camera, the vibrant colors, and the joy of capturing moments. She didn't just share her wins, she opened up about her struggles, too. "I wasted time doubting myself," she said, "but I learned to look beyond the hiccups and failures." She emphasized how important it was to keep pushing through the challenges. That moment felt like a breath of fresh air. I didn't have to fight alone. I realized that everyone faces struggles, which made their victories even sweeter. As we chatted more, she urged me to read a book called The Artist's Way. It focuses on creative recovery and strength. Just hearing about it made something inside me shift. I hurried home and ordered the book. The thought of diving into someone else's experience, hoping to find a shred of clarity, gave me a spark. That night, I began to flip through the pages, feeling a sense of warmth against the chill of frustration. Maybe this book wouldn't hold all the answers. Still, it could be a small light guiding me toward my dreams. For the first time in weeks, I felt a spark of curiosity flickering in my heart. Instead of giving up, perhaps it was time to push forward. With a fresh sense of excitement, I dived into The Artist's Way. The tips within the pages felt like new tools in a toolbox I never knew I had. I started each day by writing morning pages, where I spilled out my thoughts onto paper without judgment. At first, it was difficult, my hand felt heavy, and my mind raced with doubts. What if I wasn't creative? What if no one cared? But slowly, those worries began to fade. Writing gave me a release, clearing the fog surrounding my thoughts. After a week of practice, I noticed something in myself shifting. One Saturday, I sat down, determined to try focusing again, just as I had learned in the book. I removed distractions by leaving my phone in another room and playing soft music in the background. To my surprise, I managed to concentrate for 20 minutes and created a rough outline for a story I had been wanting to write. The joy I felt when I finished that outline was overwhelming. It was a small win, but it felt monumental. For the first time in a long while, I thought, maybe I can do this. However, that feeling was quickly tested. A few days later, I had a meeting at work where my manager would discuss our progress on different projects. Every anxiety I had about my job rushed back as I sat in the conference room, my heart pounding. I struggled to focus on what was being said. My mind drifted to thoughts of failure. Would I embarrass myself? Would I speak up and sound foolish? As the discussion heated up, I felt the heat of expectation descending on me. I clutched my notebook, my palms sweaty, every heartbeat echoing in my ears. Then, I remembered what Sarah had shared during our coffee chat. I took a deep breath, recalling her words about control and perseverance. I wanted to make her proud. I wanted to make myself proud. Summoning all the courage I could muster, I focused on the task at hand. When my manager asked me a question, I nearly froze. But in that moment, I remembered my morning pages. I quietly filled my mind with the small wins I had achieved and the shifts I had begun making. I decided to speak up. I believe we should focus more on digital campaigns, I said, trying to infuse enthusiasm into my voice. Surprisingly, my manager smiled and nodded, acknowledging my suggestion. Others chimed in, clearly interested in the idea. Although it felt good to share a thought and be heard, the relief was short-lived. After the meeting, I fell back into my familiar doubts. Sure, I had contributed this time, yet I felt like I was only taking baby steps. The weight of past expectations settled once more. Why couldn't I always feel this confident? It became clear to me that while I had made progress, I was still fighting old patterns that resisted change. That evening, I took out my journal to process my feelings. Yes, I had experienced small wins, but why did the challenge still feel so heavy? With every step forward, the past seemed to loom larger behind me, making me wonder how long it would take to truly stand on my feet. Yet, those small wins gave me a glimpse into possibility, and I realized I needed to keep pushing forward. Each time I faced a struggle, I would need to remind myself that growth doesn't happen overnight. It takes patience and will. Just when I thought I was finding my footing, life threw a curveball I wasn't prepared for. One afternoon at work, my boss called me into her office. Her serious expression made my stomach churn. I didn't know it then, but I was about to face the biggest challenge yet. As I entered her office, anxiety gripped my chest. "Emily, we've got a big project coming up," she said. "You will lead the campaign for our new product launch. This is a chance to show what you can do." At that moment, everything I had learned seemed to slip away like sand through my fingers. The weight of expectation bore down on me as my mind raced. Could I really take on such an important role? I felt a flood of panic, my heart thundered in my chest. In the past few weeks, I had managed to gain some confidence, yet here I was, clinging to self-doubt just like before. What if I mess up? What if my ideas don't work? These thoughts buzzed and burrowed into my mind, drowning out any glimmers of hope I had found. I nodded along as my boss spoke, but inside, I was screaming. That night, I returned home with a swirling mix of emotions. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at a blank page in my journal. I knew I had to plan the campaign, but all I could think was how unprepared I felt. I had been working to overcome my self-doubt, but now it seeped back into my thoughts like a familiar shadow. I wanted to fight against it, but the more I tried to think positively, the more the past whispered that I would fail. As deadlines approached, I felt overwhelmed. My mornings now began with dread, taking away the joy I once felt when writing. My old habits crept back in, making it hard to grab hold of even simple ideas. I would sit at my desk, wanting to gather my thoughts, but I often lost track of time just scrolling through endless emails. The hours melted away, and still, the product launch loomed over me like a dark cloud. The night before the presentation, the doubt was unbearable. Glasses of water flowed before me, each sip a tiny pause in the storm raging inside my mind. I felt my hands shake as I reviewed my notes, viciously critiquing my every word. What am I doing? I'm not ready for this, I muttered to myself, tears pricking at the corners of my eyes. The sense of being a fraud tightened around my chest until it was almost too much to bear. In that moment of sheer uncertainty, I confronted the paradox. My journey to discover my passion was filled with hurdles, but this felt different. It was crunch time. I needed to either push past the voice of doubt or let it take over. But how could I push forward when I felt so broken? The old me, filled with fear of failure, wanted to run away. Yet, somewhere within me, I could hear a whisper, reminding me of those small wins. This was my chance to take another step. As I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, I decided I would not let my fears define me. The path to clarity and passion would be paved with hard choices. I had come too far to let this opportunity slip away. Somehow, I had to find a way to channel my fears into strength and show up the next day ready to defy the doubt that challenged me from within. The moment was heavy with consequence, but deep inside, an ember began to glow, urging me to fight back and not let the shadows win. As morning light spilled into my room the day of the presentation, I found myself at an all-time low. The doubts that had crept in before hadn't just returned. They had grown into a thick fog that wrapped around my mind, heavy and suffocating. I sat on my bed, staring at my notes scattered across the floor. The ideas that once inspired me now felt dull and lifeless, like withered flowers. I wanted to curl up and disappear beneath the blankets, letting the day pass me by. Maybe I should just give up, I whispered into the silence. The words felt foreign and heavy, but they resonated deeply. I thought about the effort I put into trying to change my life only to find myself frozen in fear once again. Maybe it was better to go back to the safe, predictable path I was on before. Was chasing a passion really worth all this pain? As I sat there spiraling deeper into despair, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Sarah, my friend who sparked my journey by sharing her own story. I almost didn't open it, wanting to ignore the outside world. But something prompted me to read it. Hi, Emily. Just checking in. I hope your meeting went well. Remember, in every challenge, there's a lesson to learn. You've got this. Those few simple sentences felt like a gentle light piercing through the darkness. I could see her bright smile in my mind as she spoke those encouraging words. It reminded me of the time we painted together on the beach, effortlessly losing ourselves in creativity. The sun setting over the water as we laughed and shared our dreams felt like a lifetime ago, but that memory gave me a sense of connection to my true self. Suddenly, the weight pressing on me shifted slightly. I felt a little spark when I remembered why I began this journey, the joy of creativity, the passion for storytelling, and the dream of exploring my true abilities. But as quickly as it came, the fog threatened to return, pulling me back into self-doubt. I realized that Sarah's message wasn't just a friendly check-in, it pointed me back to a pivotal lesson: resilience. It dawned on me that every stumble was a part of the growth process, not the end of it. My morning pages hadn't just been a way to clear my head, they were reminders that feelings were temporary, and I could shape my reality with my thoughts. In that quiet moment, something shifted inside me. I had been so focused on avoiding failure that I forgot to embrace the journey. Each difficulty, each voice of doubt, was asking me to reflect and learn about my self-worth and strength. With newfound clarity, I picked up my notes again. This time, I didn't see failure. I saw opportunity. I reminded myself that it was okay to feel vulnerable and that I didn't need to be perfect. The courage to try was the real victory here. Once again, I poured my heart into my notes, feeling an urge to share my vision honestly and genuinely. As I took a deep breath and surrendered to the moment, I understood that this presentation was more than just a chance to show my ideas. It was a step in my journey toward embracing who I was meant to be. The fire inside me began to burn brighter, fueled by the knowledge that growth comes from pushing through challenges, not avoiding them. Determined to embrace my journey, I took one last look at my notes. The nerves still danced in my stomach, yet a sense of clarity began to overshadow the anxiety. I could feel the flickering flame of belief rising within me, encouraging me to take a stand. Today would be about more than just showing ideas. It would be a chance for me to share my voice and demonstrate what I had learned. Arriving at the office, my heart raced as I entered the meeting room. The table was filled with familiar faces, the same colleagues who had once seemed so supportive but now felt intimidating. I gripped my notes tightly, reminding myself of the vision I wanted to present. "Let's do this," I whispered, urging myself to take a deep breath. As I started my presentation, I focused on speaking clearly, allowing my true passion to seep through each word. Despite the pressure of a room full of scrutinizing eyes, I leaned into the strategies I had begun to develop. My goal was not just to present my ideas, but to create a connection with them, like the stories I had loved telling as a child. The presentation flowed until midway through when questions began to arise. My heart dropped again as I faced a difficult inquiry about how I planned to differentiate our product in a crowded market. My mind felt like it had come to a grinding halt, and for a fleeting moment, doubts clawed at me, begging me to retreat into silence. But as quickly as that fear crept in, I recalled the reassuring words from the morning pages. "You can choose to rise above your fears." I took a breath, feeling the weight of the moment settle around me. "That's a great question," I said, trying to sound confident even though my heart raced. "I believe we can focus on our unique storytelling aspects. Customers connect emotionally with brands, and sharing our journey can make a big difference." I spoke honestly, drawing from my own experiences of connecting through storytelling and creativity. The struggle wasn't over yet. My response led to a flood of further questions, each one building the pressure around me. Every query felt like a test of my newly found resolve, pushing me closer to the edge of doubt. Yet, within that chaos, I felt something shifting. My determination kicked in. Even when I faltered, I remembered that growth was born from these very trials. About halfway through, the tension finally lessened. I could perceive interested nods in the room. I mustered my strength and kept going. I illustrated my ideas clearly with visuals, simplifying the complex elements of our campaign. I explained how we could actively engage our audience with interactive content online. I saw faces begin to brighten with interest, which encouraged me even more. As I finished, I asked for feedback, ready to embrace whatever responses came my way. Questions and suggestions flowed, but this time, I felt an energy buzzing in the room, a shared enthusiasm for the ideas I had put forth. The shift felt exhilarating. As we wrapped up, my colleagues expressed their support, digging deeper into discussions about the project's potential. I walked away from that meeting filled with a new sense of accomplishment. I had pushed through self-doubt, faced difficult questions head-on, and transformed what began as a daunting challenge into a starting point for collaboration. This journey wasn't just about me finding my passion. It was about recognizing the strength within, embracing challenges, and learning to push past obstacles with resilience. I understood that real success lay not solely in overcoming difficulties, but in actively engaging with them, growing stronger through every moment of struggle. After the presentation, I felt like I had emerged from a storm, both shaken and exhilarated. My heart still raced, but I gradually recognized the cheers of congratulations that echoed around me. My colleagues expressed enthusiasm for my ideas, exploring avenues we could take to improve our strategy. The shared excitement made me realize that despite the fear and doubt I had faced, I had contributed meaningfully to the team. As I walked back to my cubicle, a small smile crept onto my lips. I couldn't shake off the sense of accomplishment. It felt like turning a page in a book that reminded me of the person I was beginning to become. I took a moment to appreciate how far I had come since that day I had felt trapped in my cubicle, weighed down by doubts and confusion. Each small victory and setback along the path contributed to this moment of clarity. Sitting at my desk, I allowed my thoughts to wander back to that morning. It was incredible to think that just hours before, I had nearly made the choice to cancel the presentation out of fear. I reflected on how I had battled self-doubt, fought against my instinct to shrink back, and found the courage to push forward anyway. I understood now that these struggles had fostered resilience, something I thought was hidden away, locked beneath layers of fear. "Welcome back," I read as Sarah's message popped back into my mind. Her belief in me sparkled like a guiding star. It hit me then. Mental toughness wasn't simply about pushing through challenges without feeling scared. It was about acknowledging those fears and choosing to act regardless. It was a reminder that vulnerability need not be taken as weakness, but instead as a part of growth. I reflected on how I had approached this journey. Rather than concentrating solely on achieving perfection, I learned that vulnerability led to authenticity, real connections, and genuine growth. I was beginning to grasp the importance of being open to learning from every experience, and that each stumble is part of the dance of life. My journey didn't end with the presentation. It was evolving into something deeper, likely much richer than I imagined. Over the next few days, my daily outlook transformed. I roamed through each moment with a fresh perspective. Tasks that felt overwhelming became opportunities for learning. Emails and meetings, once a source of dread, now felt lighter. A sense of positivity began to wrap around me, inspiring me to explore even deeper into the world I wanted to create. While I realized I had not achieved perfection, I understood that perfection wasn't the goal. The breakthrough I found during the presentation taught me the emphasis should rather be on engaging in life courageously. I fostered a vision for my future, knowing it would always hold challenges, but understanding I possessed the tools to overcome them. Sitting down at my desk, I picked up my journal and began writing. I chronicled everything I had experienced, the doubts, the breakthroughs, the moments in between. I used my new clarity as inspiration and crafted goals that reflected the person I was evolving into. The fear that once held on to me felt lighter as I slowly began to embrace a new journey with a heart full of hope and determination. Each word I penned felt like an affirmation of my progress, a pathway forward, and a commitment to staying true to myself. In the weeks that followed my breakthrough, I noticed a transformation within myself. Each day felt brighter as I stepped into the office with purpose. The nagging distractions and fears that had once clouded my mind began to fade. Instead of allowing them to run the show, I learned to ground myself in the present moment and find focus again. My morning routine took shape, no longer feeling like a chore but rather a sacred space. I began each day with simple exercises to start my mind and body. Each sunrise brought me a reminder that I could choose thoughts that uplifted me. Instead of grabbing my phone as the first action of the day, I sat with my journal, reflecting on what I wanted to achieve and how I could navigate the day ahead. I became intentional about my thoughts, and it set a positive tone for everything that followed. At work, the changes didn't go unnoticed. My colleagues began to comment on my newfound energy and confidence. Where I used to stumble over my words in meetings, I now participated with clarity. I contributed ideas freely, using my experiences to enrich discussions. During a particularly hectic week, when stress levels rose as a major deadline approached, my ability to remain calm drew attention. I became a source of support for others, too. My friends asked for advice during challenging moments, and I found myself offering guidance based on what I had learned. When a teammate struggled with anxiety about presenting to our managers, I recalled my own fears a short while ago. I shared my experience of preparing for my own presentation, emphasizing the power of vulnerability and embracing the process. One afternoon, confronted with a tight deadline, I chose to tackle my work strategically. I used focused periods using the deep work strategies I had discovered. The anxiety that once gripped me like a vice now felt manageable. I had become adept at compartmentalizing my tasks, allowing me to concentrate solely on one piece at a time. Breathing deeply, I dove into the work before me. Gone were the days of mindlessly scrolling through emails. My focus now felt like a clear stream guiding me through what needed to be done. I understood how to prioritize jobs, filter out distractions, and plot a course forward, understanding how every step was another opportunity to grow. On days filled with challenges, I met them head-on. When a project didn't go as planned at one point, I felt an initial wave of frustration, but then I paused. I could either let those feelings swallow me or I could take them as a lesson. With clarity, I identified what went wrong and reached out to my colleagues to brainstorm solutions. Together, we turned a mishap into an opportunity for innovation. Conversations shifted, colleagues opened up more with me. They began to share their own struggles and ambitions, creating a stronger team dynamic. The atmosphere at work felt lighter, filled with collaboration and support. Even small successes celebrated together fueled the sense of unity and commitment shared among us. As I integrated these lessons into my life, I noticed that healthy boundaries began to form. I no longer felt compelled to automatically say yes to every request or opportunity. I had developed a sense of awareness about what truly mattered to me. My mental strength allowed me to prioritize my own needs and say no when necessary, enabling me to channel my energy into what aligned with my passions. Reflecting on this transformation, I felt grateful for the struggles and revelations that led me here. Life would always present challenges and stress, but now I had the tools to navigate it in a way that honored my journey. Through resilience, purpose, and connection, I stepped forward into each new day ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. It felt beautiful to own my story, navigating it with courage and clarity, and to realize that this was just the beginning of a much larger adventure. As I sat at my desk one bright afternoon, a sense of calm washed over me. The buzz of the office surrounded me, but I felt a deep sense of clarity within. The whirlwind of the past months had transformed me in ways I never anticipated. Reflecting on my journey, I recognized that I had not only faced my fears, but had embraced them as part of who I was becoming. Gone were the days of feeling stuck in that dull cubicle, held back by the shadow of self-doubt. I had stood before my colleagues and shared my ideas, paving a path for future collaboration and creativity. The feedback I received made me feel seen and valued, reinforcing the belief that perseverance leads to meaningful connections. Every morning now brings with it a chance to start fresh, full of opportunities to be explored. The lessons I gathered along the way reminded me that the growth mindset, unlike a destination, is an ongoing journey. It fills me with anticipation for what lies ahead. I've learned that resistance often brings about growth, that times of discomfort can give rise to new realities. Every question I once feared became an opening to new perspectives. I still had challenges to face, and I understood that I would never be completely free of doubt. But instead of letting those doubts govern my actions, I now viewed them as stepping stones on my path. I embraced the growth brought about by each challenge and understood it as a part of my evolution. Whenever I felt overwhelmed again, I would remind myself of that experience in the meeting when I dared to believe in my voice. Working on new campaigns now lights a fire within me. Each project demands focus and passion, and I approach them with renewed energy and a willingness to collaborate with my team. The atmosphere every day feels more dynamic, filled with inspiration as we bounce ideas off one another. I have cultivated a sense of mutual support, giving me space to express freely and receive constructive feedback in return. The journey has encouraged the people around me to step out of their own comfort zones, fostered by the courage that is spreading through our office like a ripple. My boldness and willingness to face challenges now inspire me to dream even bigger. In quiet moments, I find time to sketch out potential paths ahead, from leading new projects to exploring creative workshops that blend my passions. I realize now that I am open to numerous possibilities, ready to chase glimpses of what could be. Ultimately, the most vital lesson I carry with me is about mental resilience. Struggles are not signs of weakness. Rather, they are opportunities to strengthen my inner resolve. I've learned that it is in our moments of vulnerability that we can emerge most powerfully. By facing our fears and leaning into discomfort, we gain insight that can reshape our perspectives and connection to others. As I closed my laptop for the day and looked out of the window, I faced the sun setting on the horizon. I felt a thrill at the thought of future adventures. I knew more challenges would arise, but this time, I would greet them without fear. It's not just about surviving, it's about thriving. Each puzzle, each obstacle presented to me is simply a chance to learn, grow, and continue to push myself beyond the limits I once felt were unbreakable. Whatever comes next, I am ready to embrace the journey with hope and strength.